Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Monday Night Raw review. And tonight's Raw was from the Verizon Arena in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we are 2 weeks away from SummerSlam. And I gotta say, tonight's Raw, while I have to say that it was a decent show, it wasn't shit. It wasn't perfect. The show kept my interest, in my opinion. Although there was some stuff that was shit tonight and predictable. But the last half of the show really kept my interest. But to me, Raw was a decent show tonight. Like I said, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't shit. And I have to say, it was a lot better than the Raws that we have gotten this year. But let's get started with the review. So, Raw opened up tonight. We had a recap of the history of the 24/7 championship. I'm like, oh my god. Do we really need to open up Raw with a recap of the 24/7 championships history to now, considering that this Jobber Ninja Turtle title has been on WWE TV for 2 months already, and already they're doing this this recap video for the title's history. I mean, like I said, the title's only been out for 2 months. Then we went to the first match, which was a Mosh Pit mixed tag team match for the 24/7 championship. It was Carmella and R-Truth versus Drake Maverick and his wife, Renee Michelle. And we had all the superstars on the outside. And I'm like, they call this a Mosh Pit match. This looked like a lumberjack match with all the superstars, surrounding the ring. Pretty much that was basically it was, in my opinion. That's what, made me thought of it. Made me thought of a lumberjack match. Instead, they were calling it a mosh pit match. But this match was only lasted maybe like 2 minutes. Carmella and R-Truth got the win. R-Truth retains the 24/7 Jobber Ninja Turtle title. Post-match, all the jobbers, they dogpile on top of Truth. They jump all on top of him. And we hear the referee counts to 3. And we see Mike Kanellis comes out of there. So Mike Kanellis then wins the 24/7 championship. And I'm like, oh god, a jobber wins the jobber title. So he runs backstage. The jobbers are all running after him. I'm like, you open up Raw like a circus. This whole open to Raw was a fucking circus. To me. So they're all running after Mike Kanellis. Kanellis ends up hiding in a official office. It was a WWE official office. Maria ends up coming. She's clutching her belly in pain. And she's demanding these, the superstars to be for her to be let through to see her husband, Mike. So Maria ends up starting to bang on the door, and she demands to be let in. And we have Mike, being skeptical, saying, "Oh, you're just Carmella doing a Maria, impression." And Maria ends up saying that she's going to kick him in the vagina if she doesn't let him in. So Mike ends up letting her in. It was all cringe. This whole thing was just fucking cringe, in my opinion. So and then it gets worse with the Jobber Ninja Turtle title. I'll get to that in a few. But I have to say the first 2 hours they were pretty meh. As I'm explaining this right now with the whole Jobber Ninja Turtle title, and then by like the third hour, it started to get interesting. The show piqued my interest. But then we had a 5-man gauntlet match to determine who will face AJ Styles at SummerSlam. And it was Rey Mysterio, Cesaro, Sami Zayn, and Andrade Cien Almas, and Ricochet. So the gauntlet match kicked off with Rey Mysterio versus Cesaro, which was decent, very entertaining. These two was decent in the ring. They delivered in this part of the gauntlet match. Rey Mysterio ended up eliminating Cesaro, splash from the top. So Rey Mysterio ended up staying in the match. Then Rey Mysterio then took on Sami Zayn, which he pinned Sami Zayn in like 3 minutes. That was it. It was a roll up on Sami Zayn. So Rey Mysterio ended up eliminating Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn got all pissed. The referees had to hold him back. And then Rey Mysterio took on Andrade Cien Almas. Of course, Lena Vega was at ringside. And Andrade and Mysterio, we've seen them go at it before when they were on the SmackDown matches, which were really decent and really entertaining. When both of these guys got in the ring and had their matches, they were entertaining, and I really enjoyed the rivalry that they had. But they were decent here. They were really enjoyable. Both Andrade and Mysterio, both of them gave it all they got here. But Andrade ended up getting the win. Hammerlock DDT on Rey Mysterio. So Andrade ended up winning. Post after that, Andrade ended up ripping off Rey Mysterio's mask. So while Andrade was doing that, Ricochet came out, saved Mysterio. So then we had Ricochet versus Andrade, and that was very entertaining. But this was predictable because I knew going into this Ricochet was going to win. He was going to get his rematch against AJ Styles. So and you had AJ Styles watching from backstage on the TV monitor. So Ricochet ended up winning the gauntlet match. He ended up pinning the 630 on Andrade. So Ricochet wins. He is now getting his rematch against AJ Styles at SummerSlam. And post-match, Caleb Braxton then interviews Ricochet. Charlie Caruso wasn't on Raw tonight. So Caleb Braxton was interviewing Ricochet. Ricochet takes a moment to appreciate the crowd, which they were cheering him on. And Ricochet ends up saying that when he beat Samoa Joe to become United States champion, nobody could believe it. And it was hard for him to believe it himself. He says if there's anything he's learned, it's that people only believe when they can see. He says at SummerSlam, when he beats AJ Styles, everyone will believe. And so will he. So it was a decent interview with Ricochet. And then we go backstage. We see AJ Styles. He was laughing. about, the statement that Ricochet made. So he was just laughing it off backstage. Then we went to the locker room. Mike Kanellis was telling Maria about how he won the title for them. And Maria then orders Mike to get on his back, meaning that Maria wants to win the Jobber Ninja Turtle title. She wants to take the title away from Mike and put it around her. So Maria calls the referee over. Mike ends up telling her, what is she doing? Maria ends up telling Mike that she's pinning him so her unborn child can have a champion as a present. And so she's basically ordered Mike to get down, and he ends up doing it. So Maria's, treating Mike like a dog right here. So Maria ends up putting her foot on top of Mike. Referee counts to 3. And Maria Kanellis wins the 24/7 Jobber Ninja Turtle 24/7 championship. Garbage. Absolute fucking garbage. This 24/7 title, this title needs to be fucking retired. ASAP. Retired. So, then after that, Maria ends up declaring herself the first ever pregnant champion. She holds the belt high. She leaves the locker room. She gets up in Titus O'Neil's face, asking if he'd be willing to wrestle a pregnant lady to win the title back. So she ends up saying that she's got a gynecologist appointment on Thursday. She says if anybody wants to come by and pin her while she's stuck in the stirrups. Cringe. God awful. Garbage. Shit. This was. Like I said, WWE needs to fucking retire this belt. Absolutely awful. Then we had Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross come out. We had a moment of piss. Alexa ends up giving a shout out to Maria for winning the Jobber Ninja Turtle 24/7 title. Calls Maria inspiring. Yeah, like what was inspiring that she did? She basically just put her foot on top of her husband and won the title. What was so inspiring about that? Tell me. So Nikki agrees, which, God. And she ends up saying Raw Reunion was also inspiring. And she had goosebumps at Stone Cold closing the show. I guess I could say for that, we all had goosebumps with Stone Cold closing the show. I mean, when he came out, he still had that pop from the crowd. Everybody loved when Austin came out and did his whole promo. He still gets a pop. He still gets a big pop than most of the superstars nowadays. So, but Alexa says Stone Cold said it best, saying they're all family. And she says, then the next night on SmackDown, Dolph betrayed that family by super kicking Shawn Michaels. So Alexa says he's not the only superstar lacking a moral compass. And she ends up rolling the tape. And she ends up saying that the tape we are about to see is very disturbing. So the footage was from earlier today. And the footage showed Natalya training with Fit Finlay. So she ends up rolling around in the ring, preparing for her match against Becky. And Becky ends up hitting the ring, wrenches her arm off with the disarmer. So we saw that. And we saw, I think Becky ended up pushing Finley. So we went back to a moment of bliss, a moment of piss. And both Alexa and Nikki run Becky down for her behavior. When we see Becky appear on the Titantron, Becky says, she knows that they both can hear her. So she thought she'd take a few minutes to threaten Alexa. She ends up saying, that they've got a singles match tonight. She can say as, she likes, but she'll pay for it. And and also Nikki Cross. Of course, the Alexa app went off again, the Amazon Echo in my living room. So she ends up saying, did she really come across from Scotland to make coffee for, Alexa? So Natalya learned earlier that there is no hiding from the man. And she'll see, Bliss later. So, and that's how, a moment of piss ended up ending. Because then the Usos made their entrance. They end up talking about how they're about to prove that they're the best tag team in WWE. And I'm surprised the Usos were on tonight, considering, reports came out over the weekend. Jimmy Uso got arrested. He had a DUI. So I'm surprised, that they made them compete tonight after what just happened over the weekend. So yeah, Jimmy Uso, he now has a court date. It's next month in August. Forgot the date, but I read it in an article. So he has to appear in court. So then we had a triple threat tag team match for the Raw Tag Team Championships. It was the OC, Gallows and Anderson, versus the Revival and the Usos. And surprisingly, the match itself, it was decent. It was enjoyable. It was back and forth between these guys. The Revival, of course, were the Raw Tag Team Champions. And the end of the match, the OC, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson got the win. They ended up hitting the Magic Killer on Jimmy Uso. And it looked like the Revival was going to retain the titles. But unfortunately, the Usos came in, took down the Revival. Then, Gallows and Anderson came in. And that's when they hit the Magic Killer on Jimmy Uso. So the Usos end up winning. No, I'm sorry. The OC, Gallows and Anderson, end up winning the Raw Tag Team Championship. So now they are two-time Raw Tag Team Champions. So, this is just WWE wanting them, the OC, to have the titles. So that's why they gave the tag team titles to Gallows and Anderson, considering AJ has the United States Championship on him. So they wanted to make the OC have the titles around their waists. But all in all, it was a decent match. Very enjoyable match. Then we saw AJ Styles. He was being interviewed, and the others, Gallows and Anderson, come in. They celebrate their title win. AJ Styles, Gallows and Anderson all celebrate. Styles ends up jumping on a table. He ends up failing to pop a champagne bottle. So they end up partying. So now all three members of the OC have gold around their waists. Then we saw we had the War Raiders versus two locals, Cole Carter and Johnny James. Quick match, squash match. War Raiders end up winning. Viking Experience on Johnny James. That was basically it. They're building up the War Raiders so they could so they could have competition. So that's why they're putting them with with locals. Even though I think it was like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, they were facing Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins. So it was a squash match. So then we went to the Street Profits. Montez Ford, Angelo Dawkins, backstage. They were talking about what we saw tonight. So Seth Rollins ends up coming up. They talk about the smoke Dolph Ziggler has come his way, and how the whole locker room is behind Seth. And all three of them do a burn it down together. And Seth, leaves. He's all hyped up. And then Raw went to commercial. So, that's what WWE is basically making the Street Profits do. They're not, competing because they still have the NXT Tag Team titles around them. So eventually, they're going to set up, probably Street Profits losing the NXT Tag Team titles. Now bring them up to the main roster, full time, so they could basically have matches. So that's why I sense with them doing with the Street Profits. Then we have Becky Lynch versus Alexa Bliss. This was boring. It's basically Becky just dominating on Alexa. You had Becky do the disarm her, not the disarm her, but the Bexploder on Alexa. Alexa ended up, injuring her her leg, and then we had the post match. Nikki ends up talking trash to Becky, and of course, once again, the Amazon Echo ends up going off. Oh my God! So then we had that drew me off right there with the Amazon Echo. But she was injured. Bliss, I'll say, so my Amazon Echo doesn't go off again. So we had Bliss end up faking her injury, and referees came, checked on her leg. Referee ends up calling for the match. So Becky Lynch ends up winning. That's when we had Nikki Cross. She ends up getting on the ring apron, ends up talking trash to Becky. We heard Nikki say, "Oh, I want a match against you." So Raw went to commercial. Then when Raw came back from the commercial, Becky Lynch had a match with Nikki Cross. So the match was made official. So it was Becky Lynch versus Nikki Cross, which was okay. Back and forth between the both of them. You had Bliss end up outside. She had her leg on a chair, still injured. And we know, and I knew when she was doing this, I knew it was all fake. I knew she was going to come back because if you remember, the twisted arm that she had that happened on SmackDown. She ended up faking that. So I'm like, oh, I knew it was fake. This was fake. That she was faking this. So Becky ended up getting the win. Manhandle slam on Nikki Cross. So Becky ends up winning. Post-match, Bliss ends up attacking Becky from behind. So you knew right there, it was predictable. We all knew that she was fine because she did this before. So Bliss ends up attacking Becky from behind. Nikki ends up attacking Becky, so we had a 2-on-1 assault on Becky. Natalya comes in. Bliss and Nikki retreat out of the ring. So Natalya is in there. She ends up delivering a sharpshooter to Becky. Yeah, Becky ends up screaming. And basically that was what happened post-match. But it was an okay match between Becky and Nikki. Then we had Kayla Braxton. She was interviewing Natalya. Natalya says, it's not about making friends. It's about being professional. And at SummerSlam, after she beats Becky, she's not going to want a handshake. She says, in fact, she'd like to make the match a submission match. Sharpshooter versus disarmer. She says she doesn't think the man has the guts to accept. So she's not going to issue a challenge. It was a short interview with Natalya. Then we went to Seth Rollins versus Dolph Ziggler. Like, we haven't seen these two guys go at it before. If you remember, we saw these two guys go last year at like 10 Raws and 5 pay-per-views. This ain't nothing new. We saw Seth and Dolph go at it before. So Seth made his way out. Got a pop from the crowd. And then we hear Shawn Michaels, HBK's music, hit. So the crowd was all hyped up, thinking that Shawn Michaels was there, which he really wasn't. It was Dolph Ziggler. Dolph ended up coming out. He played the fans. So we had the match, Seth versus Dolph. And Ziggler actually got on the mic, and he ends up saying, "Oh, Seth Rollins looks like he lost his smile," referencing to when Shawn Michaels lost his smile back in, I think it was '97, and he says that Rollins should be thanking him. He says for every embarrassment that comes back to take their spots away from either Shawn Michaels to Goldberg. So Dolph ends up saying that they are all pathetic. And he ends up saying, tonight you get to see the real main event, which of course, he meant by himself. And so the match got underway. And, the match was really, we saw them both go at it before, last year in a lot of matches. So this is nothing new. But towards the end of the match, we had Brock Lesnar. And this is where the start of the third hour I really enjoyed. So Brock Lesnar came down. He ended up beating down on Seth Rollins. So because of that, the match ended in a disqualification. Seth Rollins won by disqualification. So post-match, this is where Brock Lesnar ended up destroying Seth Rollins. Post-match, Lesnar ends up hitting suplexes to Seth. The second suplex that Lesnar hit Seth with, Seth went out of the ring. So then Lesnar ends up driving Seth into the barricade. He ended up hitting a suplex outside the ring to Seth. So then we see Lesnar ends up picking up Seth, and he delivers the F5 to Seth on the ring post. And it looked like, Seth's ribs end up hitting the ring post. So Lesnar ends up tossing Seth back in the ring. Lesnar ends up taking a chair. And he gets in the ring, hits Seth with the chair. Lesnar then takes the chair and sets it down. Lesnar sits down on the chair, staring down at Seth. He then gets up. He delivers another F5 to Seth on the chair. And Seth ends up delivering that F5 on the chair. Looks like it was a rib shot. Rib shots hit the chair. His ribs hit the chair. And Lesnar then hits another F5 to Seth on the chair once again. And Seth was, coughing really badly, and was shown that he was bleeding from the mouth. Seth was bleeding from the mouth. Lesnar then ends up hitting another F5 to Seth on the chair. And it was really crazy. It was really brutal what Lesnar did. And it was shown that Seth was then being loaded on a stretcher. And we saw like the blood on his teeth and on his mouth. So then Raw went to commercial. Then when Raw came back from the commercial, we went backstage. We saw the EMTs rushing Seth into the ambulance. Seth was on the stretcher. Becky Lynch was there, watching her boyfriend being put into the ambulance. The Usos end up walking by. Roman was there. And Roman and the Usos were attacked backstage. The Usos were attacked by Gallows and Anderson. Roman was attacked by Samoa Joe. So there was a beatdown backstage with them. And we saw Seth was being put into the ambulance. Lesnar ends up coming because the ambulance was going to take off. Ambulance was taken off. It stopped short. And we find out that Lesnar was in front of the ambulance. Tells the driver to stop, the ambulance. He's like, don't move. So Lesnar walks to the back of the ambulance, opens the door, drags Seth and the stretcher out of the ambulance. So Seth ends up, rolling, and the stretcher then hits a crew crate, and Seth ends up falling off the stretcher. And Lesnar ends up picking up Seth, and Lesnar ends up doing another F5 to Seth on the stretcher. And of course, Seth was coughing again, and we saw the blood that was coming out of Seth, from his mouth. So, and that's pretty much how, it ended. But very brutal beatdown by Brock Lesnar to Seth Rollins. Brock destroyed Seth Rollins here. Really did. And without a doubt, Seth may have internal injuries, because he took those bumps, on the top of the chair, which, was crazy. So he may have internal injuries from all this, especially with the ribs. So without a doubt, Seth might have internal injuries because of this attack by Brock Lesnar. But it was really crazy. It was really brutal. And, kind of hard to watch, with Seth, bleeding, from the mouth. And you see, the blood was shown, in his teeth and on his mouth. And pretty much he was coughing it up. But it was crazy. It was brutal. I enjoyed it. It was entertaining. It was crazy to see. Then we had Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe ended up coming out. He got on the mic. He says the Samoan Summit, which was advertised, I don't know what basically this Samoan Summit would have been. He says the summit has been canceled due to catastrophic failure of peace talks. He says that's fine by him because he came here to fight, not to talk. He demanded Roman to make his way down to finish the beatdown that they started in the back. So Roman ended up coming out. Joe ends up throwing punches at Roman. Roman powers up, knocks Joe to the floor with a right arm. He ends up punching on the floor and ends up smashing Joe's face into the apron. Roman ends up, going into the steel steps. Roman ends up throwing, this was really cool. Roman ended up throwing the steps in Joe's face. Like the steps end up bouncing off of Joe's face. And Drew McIntyre ended up coming out, made the save, and McIntyre ended up getting whipped into the post. Cedric Alexander ends up coming out, and he ended up hitting, neutralizer for Drew McIntyre off the ropes. But Joe ends up destroying Cedric Alexander with a lariat. McIntyre ended up fighting Cedric up the ramp. Joe went after Reigns, and the brawls started getting near the announce table. We had the Usos and Gallows and Anderson come down, so we had a brawl between these guys, and we see what was really awesome. Cedric Alexander was on top of the LED board. He ended up diving off the LED board. He ended up taking out everybody, which was fucking awesome. And we went back into the ring. Cedric Alexander ended up countering the Claymore because it was him and McIntyre in the ring. He ended up countering the Claymore kick with a drop kick. Then we see Carl Anderson cuts him off. Gallows ends up coming in. Roman ends up making the save before they hit the Magic Killer. He ends up delivering Superman punches. And the Usos end up delivering both super kicks to Samoa Joe. And Roman ends up taking out Joe with the spear. So we had Roman, the Usos, and Cedric Alexander standing tall. And that's how pretty much Raw ended tonight. But like I said, Raw to me was a decent show. It wasn't shit, wasn't perfect, but it was decent, in my opinion. So, I mean, there was stuff that were meh, stuff that was garbage with the 24/7 Jobber Ninja Turtle title. All in all, I enjoyed the Seth Rollins beatdown by Brock Lesnar. It was really crazy, very brutal. And I really liked, this ending with the brawl between the Usos, Gallows and Anderson, McIntyre, Joe, Cedric Alexander. It was awesome. And seeing Cedric Alexander dive off the LED board, that was really awesome. And how the way he took out everybody there was awesome. So anyways, that's it for my review of tonight's Monday Night Raw. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. And definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. And sorry about not mentioning Alexa because of the Amazon Echo. So I gotta turn that down next time when I mention her name. So, but anyways, thank you all for watching. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and until next video, which will probably be the SmackDown review. So until that video, I'll see you all later.